The yearly clandestine meetings of the Bilderberg date back to 1954, which features a guest list of around 130 people from Europe and North America including everyone from the royals to business tycoons, have been participating to maneuver world events and policies. According to the official Bilderberg website, discussions are held under the Chatham House Rule, which means participants can use any information they receive during the meeting but cannot reveal its source. For over half a century, no agenda or discussion topics became public nor is any press coverage allowed. The few invited Fourth Estate attendees and their bosses are sworn to secrecy. Whatever its early mission, the group is now a shadow world government threatening to take away human rights to direct our destinies, by creating a disturbing reality very much harming the public's welfare. In short, the Bilderbergs want to replace individual nation-state sovereignty with an all-powerful global government, corporate-controlled, and checkmated by militarized enforcement. Along with military dominance, controlling the world's money supply is crucial, for with it comes absolute control, as the powerful 19th-century Rothschild family understood. As the patriarch Amschel Rothschild once said,
"Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws."
Hence, early in its history, the Bilderbergs decided to create an aristocracy of purpose between Europe and the United States, to reach a consensus to rule the world on matters of policy, economics, and overall strategy. NATO was essential for their plans, to ensure perpetual war and nuclear blackmail to be used as necessary. Then proceed to loot the planet, to achieve magnificent wealth and power, and defeat all challengers to keep it. Yet, of all the social institutions we are born into, directed by, and conditioned upon, there seems to be only one system that has been taken for granted, and misunderstood to unimaginable proportions, is that of money. Taken to religious levels and beyond, the established monetary institutions exists as one of the most unquestioned forms of faith there is on the planet, from how money is created, to the policies by which it is governed, and how it truly affects society as we know it. In a world where 1% of the population owns 40% of the planet's wealth, where tens of thousands of children die every single day from poverty and preventable diseases, and 50% of the world's population lives on less than a few dollars a day, one thing is certain: something is dreadfully wrong. Sir William Pitt, House of Lords, had this to say in 1770,
"There is something behind the throne greater than the king himself."
Franklin D. Roosevelt, U.S. President, 1933,
"The real truth of the matter is that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson."
The American Revolution began as the American colonies who sought to separate themselves from England and its oppressive monarchy. Though there are many reasons for the revolution, what particularly stands out, as the primary cause, is that King George III of England outlawed the interest-free independent currency the colonies were producing and using for themselves. In turn, this forced them to borrow money from the Central Bank of England with interest, of course, which immediately put the colonies into debt. As Benjamin Franklin later wrote,
"The refusal of King George to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the primary cause of the revolution."
In 1783, America won its independence from England. However, the battle against the central bank concept, and the corruption associated with it, had only just begun. A central bank is an institution that produces the currency of an entire nation. Based on historical precedent, there are specific powers that are inherent in the central banking practice: the control of interest rates, and the control of the money supply, or inflation. The central bank does not simply supply a government's economy with money, it loans it to them with interest. By increasing and decreasing the supply of money, the central bank regulates the value of the currency being issued. It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity, at this point, to figure out the swindle. For every single dollar produced by the central bank loaned at interest, means every single dollar produced, is the dollar plus a certain percentage of debt attached to it based on that dollar. Since the central bank has the monopoly to produce the currency and lends each dollar out with an immediate debt attached to it, where does the money come from to reduce the debt? It can only come from the same source, the central bank. It is for this reason that the central bank must perpetually increase its money supply, to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which only results in new money being loaned out at interest, creating additional debt. The result of this system without fail is slavery, for it is impossible for the government, and thus the public, to ever come out of the self-generating debt. The founding fathers of our countries were aware of this. Thomas Jefferson had this to say, 1743–1826,
"I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered."
Sir Josiah Stamp said, 1880–1941,
"If you want to remain slaves of the bankers and pay for the costs of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and control the nation's credit."
By the early 20th century the United States had already implemented and removed a few central banking systems, which were swindled into place by the ruthless banking interests. At that time, the dominating families of banking and business were J. D. Rockefeller, J. P. Morgan, Paul Warburg and Baron Rothschild. In the early 1900s, they sought to push, once again, legislation to create another central bank. However, they knew the government and public were wary of such an institution being created. These corrupt men needed to create an incident to affect the public opinion. J. P. Morgan, who was publicly considered a financial authority, exploited his influence by publishing rumors about a prominent bank in New York wasn't solvent or bankrupt. Morgan knew this would cause mass hysteria which would affect the other banks. The public, in fear of losing their deposits, immediately began mass withdrawals. Consequently, the banks were forced to call in their loans, causing their recipients to sell their property, and thus a spiral of bankruptcies, repossessions and turmoil materialized. After putting the pieces together a few years later, Frederick Lewis Allen of Life magazine wrote,
"The Morgan interests took advantage to participate the panic of 1907, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed."
Unaware of the fraud, the Panic of 1907 led to the congressional investigation headed by Senator Nelson Aldrich, who had intimate ties to the banking cartels and later became part of the Rockefeller family through marriage. The commission led by Aldrich recommended a central bank should be implemented, so a panic like 1907 could never happen again. This was exactly what the international bankers needed to initiate their contrived plan. In 1910 a secret meeting was held at the J. P. Morgan's estate on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. It was there that the Central Banking Bill, called the Federal Reserve Act, was written. This legislation was written by bankers, not lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, and concealed from government and public knowledge, that 10 or so figures who attended, disguised their identities when en route to the island. After this bill was constructed, it was then handed over to their political front man, Senator Nelson Aldrich, to push through Congress. Thank you for watching. If you are a critical thinker and wish to learn more, you can download a copy of Ominous Expectation 3rd edition. Ominous Expectations is an explosive and informative publication, revealing the underlying Great Plan, Agenda 21, known as the New World Order. This agenda has been in motion since 1954. However, comprehensive research reveals that the United Nations Agenda 21 dates back to the 19th century BC, King Nimrod's reign. The evidence contained herein further gives the reader a snapshot of what to expect in the near future, as we head towards the ratified agenda that is going to change the world as we know it. The contents in this publication are not a conspiracy theory, but rather, the aligning of political, historical, science and biblical facts coming together, concerning the egregious enslavement that has taken place for centuries. The publication further exposes the fraudulent system that has looted society of its wealth, in exchange for a valueless, fiat, currency, that is essentially nothing more than debt. This 263-page ebook includes over 1,500 pages of free downloadable documents, and hours of supporting video links on our private server available for viewing or download. You can obtain a copy of Ominous Expectations for the low cost of $9.95 by visiting kyprios.ca, or by emailing us at pkaa@kyprios.com. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, and be sure to share.